I was born into a wealthy family, and for a long time, I thought that meant I had everything. But as I grew up, I realized that money couldn't buy what I wanted most: recognition. The reason? My twin sister, Lena. Even though we were twins, she was always the one people noticed. She was effortlessly beautiful, graceful, and had this frustrating ability to steal the spotlight without even trying. And if that wasn't bad enough, she copied everything I did. If I bought a dress, she'd get the exact same one the next day. If I tried a new hairstyle, suddenly she was rocking it too. It was like she couldn't exist without mirroring me. And yet, somehow, she was the one everyone adored. The final straw came one morning when I walked into the dining room, feeling good for once in my brand new red dress. And there she was wearing the exact same one. "Lena, what the hell?" I snapped, my appetite disappearing. She blinked at me, feigning innocence. "Oh, this. I just thought it looked cute." I clenched my fists. "You bought it because I wore it first." She laughed, waving me off. "Come on, don't be so dramatic." Before I could say another word, my parents walked in, and, as expected, Lena played the victim. "Lily, are you bullying Lena again?" My mom sighed. I stared at her in disbelief. "She's the one copying me. Enough, Lily." My dad cut me off. "She's your sister. It's normal for siblings to share styles." Normal? It wasn't normal. It was suffocating. But arguing was useless. My parents always took her side. Lena gave me a small, smug smile behind their backs, and I felt my blood boil. At school, it was the same story. The moment we stepped out of the car, all eyes were on Lena. Guys gawked, girls whispered. And me? I might as well have been invisible. But in the classroom, things were different. At least there, I had my achievements. I was the smart one, the hardworking one. Lena, on the other hand, barely scraped by. But no one cared, because she was beautiful. During lunch, I tried to avoid her, as always. But, as always, she followed me. I was about to escape when, crash. A girl passing by had bumped into Lena, spilling her entire tray of food all over the floor. Lena gasped dramatically. "Lily, I told you to watch where you were going." I froze. "What?" I didn't. The girl who had actually bumped into her looked just as confused as I did, but before she could say anything, Lena turned her big, innocent eyes on her. "I'm so sorry," she said sweetly. "Let me get you another meal." The crowd watching let out a collective awe, praising her kindness. Meanwhile, I got dagger-like glares. "She's so nice," someone whispered. "Unlike Lily," another muttered. "She always looks pissed off." I couldn't believe it. Lena had twisted everything in seconds, and I was somehow the villain in a story where I hadn't even done anything. I stormed out of the cafeteria, my stomach empty but my anger full. I sat outside on a bench, fuming. I hated Lena. I hated how she made me feel like I didn't matter. "Hey," I looked up, startled. A guy stood in front of me, holding a full tray of food. He was tall, with messy dark hair and a confident smirk. I had never seen him before. "Who are you?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "Jack," he said, handing me the tray. "Figured you could use this after what just happened in there." I hesitated before taking it. "You saw that?" "Yeah," he said, sitting beside me. "And I don't buy your sister's act for a second." For the first time all day, I felt my anger melt just a little. "Someone actually believed me?" Jack grinned. "You've got great eyes, by the way." "Kind of fierce." I blinked, thrown off. "Really? Most people say they're too small." "Nah, they're interesting." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. This guy was different. And for the first time in forever, someone was looking at me, not at Lena. Not at what I lacked, but at me. Maybe today wasn't a complete disaster after all. But little did I know, the worst was yet to come. Just as I stepped back into class, something cold drenched me from head to toe. A bucket of water. Laughter erupted around the room. My breath caught in my throat as I stood there, soaked and humiliated. "This is for being a jealous, selfish brat," someone sneered. I clenched my fists, shaking with rage. I knew exactly who had orchestrated this. Lena. But before I could react, a familiar, strict voice cut through the laughter. "What is going on here?" Miss Emily, our homeroom teacher, stood at the door, her eyes blazing with fury. The laughter died instantly. The culprit stammered excuses, but she wasn't having it. "All of you, detention. Now." Even Lena wasn't spared. For once, she had to face the consequences of her actions. That should have made me feel better. But that night, as I sat at the dinner table, she struck first. She told our parents her version of the story before I could even open my mouth. And, as always, they believed her without hesitation. "Lily, you should apologize," my father said. "Lena was only trying to help you fit in." I felt my chest tighten. "Are you serious?" "She's the one who got me humiliated in front of everyone." "Stop being dramatic," my mother sighed. "You always make things about yourself." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my plate across the room. But instead, I pushed my chair back and stormed out. I wasn't going to win. Not tonight. Not ever. I sat in the park alone, staring up at the night sky, trying to make sense of my life. Then, suddenly, Lily, I turned to see Jack standing there, hands in his pockets, looking at me with something that almost resembled understanding. "Hey," he said, sitting down next to me. "Want to talk?" And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, someone was on my side. Jack sat beside me on the park bench, hands stuffed into his jacket pockets, the cool night air making his breath visible. I didn't know what to say at first. After the disaster of today, Lena humiliating me, my parents siding with her, and the whole school turning me into the villain, this was the first moment of peace I had. And somehow, Jack was a part of it. "So, rough day?" he asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. I let out a humorless laugh. Understatement of the year. Jack leaned back, tilting his head toward the sky. "I've only been at this school for, a few days? And even I can tell your sister's got some kind of act going." I turned to him, surprised. "You really see that?" he smirked. "Oh yeah, the way she plays innocent but makes sure you take the fall. Classic manipulation." "She's good though, really good," I scoffed. "Tell me about it." Silence stretched between us. It wasn't awkward though, just comfortable, like he actually understood. After a moment, he sighed. "You know, people like that, they always get away with it because no one ever fights back the right way." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He turned to me, his dark eyes flickering with something unreadable. "You can't beat someone like Lena by playing fair." I raised a brow. "And you have a better idea?" He grinned. "I always have ideas." Something about the way he said it made my stomach twist. Excitement, maybe, or danger. But after everything I'd been through, I was willing to listen. The next morning, I was ready. I wasn't going to sit back and let Lena walk all over me anymore. If she wanted to play games, I'd show her that I could play too. Jack had given me an idea, a simple one really. People believed whatever they saw. And for years, Lena had made sure I was seen as the mean, jealous sister. But what if I changed the narrative? What if I made her look like the bad guy for once? I walked into school with my head held high, ignoring the whispers that followed me after yesterday's incident. I spotted Lena near her locker, surrounded by her usual crowd. They were laughing, completely oblivious to what was coming. Perfect. I took a deep breath, then walked straight up to her, putting on my best fake smile. "Lena," I said sweetly, "I just wanted to say how sorry I am about yesterday. For embarrassing you in front of everyone." Her smile faltered just a little. What?" I made my voice loud enough for the people around us to hear. I totally understand now. "You were just trying to make me look bad so you'd seem like the better twin. And it worked. You really had everyone fooled." A few people around us exchanged glances. Lena's eyes flickered with panic for a second before she composed herself. "Lily, what are you talking about?" she said, laughing nervously. "I didn't do anything." I gasped dramatically. "Oh my gosh, you're right. You didn't do anything. You just let people think I was the bad guy. That's so much smarter." The crowd went silent. Someone in the back muttered, "Wait, is that true?" Lena's face turned red. "You're being ridiculous." I shrugged. "Maybe. But isn't it funny how, whenever something bad happens, I'm always the one blamed? And you're always the innocent victim?" More whispers. Lena clenched her fists. I smiled, leaning in just a little. "Game on, sis." Then I walked away, leaving her standing there, speechless. By lunch, the rumors had already started spreading. People were beginning to question things, little things, but enough to make cracks in Lena's perfect image. And the best part? I didn't even have to lie. I just planted the seed. Jack was waiting for me outside, leaning against a tree. "Damn," he said when I walked up. "That was impressive." I smirked. "Told you I could play dirty." He chuckled. You might just be more dangerous than I thought. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction bubbling inside me. For once, Lena wasn't in complete control. But just when I thought things were turning in my favor, she struck back. That evening, I was in my room, scrolling through my phone when I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown, hey, I need to talk to you. It's important. I frowned. Weird. The message was followed by an address, a location not too far from my house. My gut told me it was a bad idea, but curiosity got the best of me. I slipped out quietly, making my way to the location. It was an empty parking lot behind a closed cafe, and standing there waiting was Lena. She crossed her arms, looking completely calm. Too calm. Took you long enough. I narrowed my eyes. What do you want? She smirked. I just thought we should talk. You know, twin to twin. I stayed silent. She sighed dramatically. I'll admit, your little stunt today was clever. You actually made people doubt me. But do you really think you can beat me at my own game? I clenched my fists. I don't want to play games, Lena. I just want you to stop ruining my life. She laughed. Oh, Lily. You ruin your own life just fine without me. My jaw tightened. What do you want, Lena? She took a step closer. I want to make a deal. I frowned. A deal? She nodded. We both know this can go on forever. So why don't we call a truce? We both stop messing with each other. You go your way, I go mine. I studied her face. She was lying. She wanted me to back off because, for the first time, she felt threatened. I crossed my arms. And what if I say no? Her smirk widened. Then I make sure that whatever reputation you have left is completely destroyed. I stared at her, heart pounding. She was serious, and knowing Lena, she wasn't bluffing. For the first time, I had the upper hand. But if I pushed too hard, she'd push back harder. I had a choice to make. Did I take the deal and let her win again? Or did I keep fighting? Lena stood there, waiting for my answer, her smirk never faltering. The old me would have given in, taken the deal, let her win. But I wasn't the same girl anymore. I took a slow breath, staring straight into her eyes. No deal. For a second, I saw the flicker of uncertainty in her expression. It was gone almost immediately, replaced by amusement. Wow, bold move, she said, crossing her arms. You really think you can take me on? I didn't answer. I just turned and walked away. I had wasted enough time playing her game. But as I walked back home, something about the way she let me go so easily unsettled me. Lena never backed off without a backup plan. And I was right to be worried. The next morning, the storm hit. I walked into school, ready for another battle, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Plastered across the school walls were printouts of fake text messages that made it look like I was the villain all along. Lily, Lena is so stupid, I wish she'd just disappear. Lily, I hate her. I wish I was an only child. Lily, I'll ruin her life. Just watch. My stomach twisted. The messages weren't real, but they looked real enough. She had thought of everything, the timestamps, the formatting. It was perfect, and it worked. Whispers followed me. As I walked through the hallways, people the first barely spoke to shot me disgusted looks. Even teachers glanced at me differently. Lena had won again. Or at least, that's what she thought. At lunch, Jack found me before I could even sit down. What the hell is this? He asked, shoving one of the printouts into my hands. I gritted my teeth. It's fake. He ran a hand through his hair. Yeah, I figured. But no one else seems to care about the truth. I glanced around. He was right. People were staring at me like I was some kind of monster. Lena had taken my attempt at fighting back and flipped it against me. I clenched my fists. She wants me to break. She wants me to lose. Jack studied me for a moment, then leaned in. Then don't let her. I frowned. What are you saying? He smirked. If she wants to play dirty, let's give her a taste of her own medicine. That night, Jack and I got to work. I wasn't about to let Lena get away with this. If she wanted to create fake messages, fine. Two could play that game. Jack was good, really good. He had connections, skills, and more importantly, he had dirt on Lena. By the next morning, a new wave of messages had mysteriously found their way into the school. Lena, Lily's such an idiot. I can make everyone hate her and she'll still come crawling back. Lena, I don't even have to try. She ruins her own life. Lena, everyone at school is so dumb, I can make them believe anything. Revenge was sweet. Lena stormed up to me between classes, face red with fury. You little, I raised an eyebrow. Something wrong, sis. She threw the printouts in my face. This isn't funny, Lily. You know I never said this. I tilted my head. Oh, so now you know how it feels? Her eyes burned with hatred. You're playing a dangerous game. I shrugged. I'm just doing what you taught me. For the first time, Lena didn't have a response. But I should have known it wouldn't end there. By the time I got home, my parents were waiting for me, their faces dark with disappointment. My mother held up one of the fake messages. Lily, what is this? I crossed my arms. It's fake, just like the ones about me. Dad's expression hardened. So you admit you did this? I hesitated. Lena did it first. Mom sighed, rubbing her temples. Lily, you're not a child anymore. You can't keep blaming your sister for everything. My chest tightened. I am not blaming her. I am defending myself. My father slammed his fist on the table. Enough. The room went silent. He looked between Lena and me. I've had it with this nonsense. If you two can't act like family, then maybe it's time we set some real boundaries. I swallowed hard. What do you mean? He exhaled sharply. Starting now, you and Lena will be separated. No more sharing a school. No more living under the same roof. I felt like the ground had been pulled from under me. Wait, what? Mom nodded, her expression pained. We've arranged for you to transfer schools. You'll be staying with your aunt for a while. Panic surged through me. You're sending me away? Just like that? Dad's face was unreadable. It's for the best. I turned to Lena, expecting some kind of reaction, but she just stood there, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I should have been furious. I should have screamed, fought back. But instead, I just felt empty. That night, I packed my bags, numb. Jack called me, but I didn't have the energy to answer. What was there to say? I had finally fought back, and now I was being exiled from my own home. As I sat on my bed, staring at the packed suitcase beside me, my bedroom door opened. Lena stepped inside. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then, she sighed. This wasn't how I wanted things to go. I scoffed. Oh, really? You've been trying to get rid of me for years. She sat down on my bed, her usual arrogance gone. I never wanted you gone, Lily. I needed to be seen. I clenched my fists. And you thought the only way to do that was by tearing me down? She didn't answer. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes I had never noticed before: guilt. She let out a bitter laugh. I didn't expect you to fight back the way you did. I shrugged. Guess you underestimated me. She smirked, but it wasn't mocking this time. Yeah, I did. Silence stretched between us. Then, softly, she said, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure if I could believe her, but maybe, just maybe, there was a part of her that actually meant it. The next morning, I left. I didn't look back, but as I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Leaving felt like defeat. As the car pulled up to my aunt's house, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I didn't belong here. I belonged at home, fighting for my place. But instead, my parents had packed me off like I was the problem. Aunt Margaret greeted me with a warm smile, completely unaware of the war I'd just lost. Lily. It's been too long. I forced a smile. Yeah, it has. She ushered me inside, offering food, asking about school, doing all the things parents should do when they actually care. I appreciated it, but my mind was somewhere else. On Lena, on what she was doing now that I was gone, and, more importantly, whether she was winning. My new school was different. No one knew me here. No one whispered about Lena or fake text messages or cafeteria humiliations. I was just another student, another face in the crowd. It was freeing, and yet it felt wrong. I had spent so much of my life fighting to be seen that being invisible now felt unnatural. I walked through the halls waiting for someone to talk behind my back, to snicker, to call me Lena's jealous twin. But no one did. For the first time, I wasn't Lily, the bitter twin. I was just Lily, and I didn't know if I liked it. Then, 3 days after I transferred, Lena called. I stared at her name on my phone screen, heart pounding. I had half a mind to ignore her. But curiosity got the better of me, I answered. What do you want? For a second, she didn't say anything. Then, she sighed. So, you're really gone? I rolled my eyes. No, Lena. I faked my own disappearance and moved to Europe. Yes, I'm gone. She ignored the sarcasm. You should see how things are at school now. I frowned. What do you mean? Lena hesitated, and for the first time in forever, she actually sounded unsure. People don't look at me the same way, she admitted. It's like they're starting to realize what I did. I sat up. Are you saying your little kingdom is falling apart? She let out a humorless laugh. I guess you could say that. I should have been thrilled. I should have celebrated. But instead, I felt something I didn't expect. Emptiness. This was what I wanted, right? For her to finally face the consequences? Then why didn't it feel like a victory? The next morning I got another call, this time from Jack. You're not gonna believe this, he said, voice tight. I sighed. What now? Lena's been avoiding school. People are turning on her. And guess who's been making things worse? I frowned. Who? Jack hesitated. Then William. My stomach dropped. Wait, William? As in, Jack's twin? Yeah. I sat up, gripping my phone tighter. Why the hell is he involved? Jack exhaled sharply, because he figured out the truth about what happened at the prom. About how Lena and I were supposed to be together, but he played his little game instead. It all clicked in an instant. William had pretended to be Jack that night. He kissed Lena in front of everyone, making it look like Jack had betrayed me. And now that I was gone, he was back to playing his own game. I gritted my teeth. So what's he doing? Jack's voice darkened. He's making sure Lena pays. I didn't want to care. I really didn't. But as I sat there, thinking about William and the damage he could do, I felt something I never expected. Concern. Lena had hurt me. She had ruined me. But William, he wasn't any better. And the idea of him tearing her down, using her the way he had used me, made my stomach turn. I had to do something. That night, I packed a bag. I wasn't staying here anymore. I was going back. Not for revenge, not to win, but to end this, for good. I stood outside my old school, heart pounding in my chest. I never thought I'd come back. Not this soon, not like this. But here I was, gripping the straps of my backpack, staring at the place where everything fell apart. The halls were exactly the same, but the energy was different. People still whispered, but this time it wasn't about me. It was about Lena. I caught snippets of conversation as I walked past. Did you hear? She hasn't shown up all week. Yeah, I saw her the other day. She looked awful. She's finally getting what she deserves. Something about their tone unsettled me. It wasn't just gossip, it was cruelty. The same kind that had been aimed at me not long ago. And I knew exactly who was behind it. I spotted Jack by the lockers, arms crossed, watching me with a knowing smirk. Didn't think I'd see you here again. I stopped in front of him. Where is he? Jack didn't even pretend to misunderstand. William? He shrugged. Last I checked, he was busy running your sister into the ground. I clenched my jaw. And you just let him? Jack raised an eyebrow. After everything she did to you, you're really gonna feel bad for her now. I hesitated. He wasn't wrong. Lena had ruined me. She deserved to be called out. She deserved to feel what I had felt. But not like this. Not by William. Because if there was one thing I knew for sure, it was that William wasn't doing this for justice. He was doing it for fun, and I wasn't going to let him. I found Lena in the one place I never expected alone. She sat behind the gym, knees drawn up to her chest, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. The usual confidence, gone. The perfect posture, gone. For the first time in my life, she looked beaten. I swallowed, unsure of what to say. Lena. She flinched at my voice but didn't look up. I stepped closer. What happened? She let out a dry laugh. Isn't it obvious? I lost. I frowned. Lost what? She finally lifted her head, and I almost didn't recognize her. Her face was pale, her eyes rimmed red. Everything, she whispered. For a second, I didn't move. This was Lena, the girl who had spent her whole life making mine miserable. The girl who had copied me, humiliated me, stolen from me. And yet, seeing her like this didn't bring me the satisfaction I thought it would. It just made me angry. Not at her, at him, at William. The first took a breath. What exactly did he do? Lena let out a shaky exhale. He turned them all against me. He made up stories, spread rumors. Worse than anything I ever did to you. She looked at me then, eyes hollow. And the worst part? No one even questioned it. I knew that feeling too well. And I wasn't going to let it happen again. Finding William wasn't hard. He was exactly where I expected him to be, holding court in the cafeteria. laughing like he owned the place. I walked straight up to him, slamming my hands on the table. He raised an eyebrow, unfazed. Well, if it isn't the comeback queen. I didn't waste time. Leave Lena alone. He smirked. Why? Didn't she do the same to you? I glared at him. I didn't say she didn't deserve consequences. But what you're doing, you're not giving her what she deserves. You're playing with her. William leaned back, amused. And that was why he was dangerous. Because he didn't care. Not about me. Not about Lena. Not about anyone. I took a step closer. You're just like Jack. For the first time, his smirk faltered. I pressed on. You both like watching people squirm. You act like you're helping, but you're just pulling the strings for your own amusement. Jack, who had been silently watching, finally spoke. Hey, I cut him off. You knew what William was doing, and you let it happen. That makes you just as bad. The cafeteria had gone silent. Everyone was watching. I turned back to William. I get it. You think you're untouchable. That you can get away with anything because you're smarter than everyone else. I tilted my head. But tell me, what happens when people realize they're just your puppets? His expression hardened. I smiled. What happens when they turn on you? I could already see it, people shifting, exchanging uncertain glances. Doubt. William had built his power on control, and I had just cracked it. He stood up slowly, leaning in. You think you're clever, Lily? I met his gaze without flinching. I think I just beat you. His jaw clenched. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. And just like that, it was over. Lena found me after school. She stood awkwardly, arms crossed, as if unsure what to say. Finally, she sighed. You didn't have to do that. I shrugged. Yeah, I did. She looked at me, something unreadable in her eyes. Why? I hesitated. Because for all the things we've done to each other, I wouldn't wish what he did on anyone. Silence. Then, for the first time in our entire lives, Lena looked at me like I was her sister. Not a rival, not an enemy, just her sister. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. That night, I got a text from my dad. Dad, come home. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then, I typed back 2 words. Me, I'm ready. Coming home felt surreal. The house looked exactly the same: tall gates, polished floors, everything screaming wealth. But something about it felt different. Maybe because I had changed. Dad was waiting in the doorway when I stepped out of the car. He looked tired, older. Maybe all the fighting had finally worn him down. He didn't say anything at first, just studied me like he was trying to figure out if I was real. Then, he let out a slow breath. Welcome home, Lily. I swallowed. Thanks. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive them, but I was ready to be here. Lena wasn't home when I arrived, or maybe she was just avoiding me. Either way, I didn't go looking for her. Instead, I sat in my room, my old room. It felt smaller than I remembered. I used to feel trapped here, suffocated by the weight of being the lesser twin. Now I just felt at peace. My phone buzzed. Jack, so you're back for good? I hesitated before replying. Me, I guess so. A few seconds later, another message. Jack, good. Things were getting boring without you. I rolled my eyes but couldn't help smiling a little. Dinner was quiet. Mom kept looking between me and Dad like she was waiting for one of us to snap. But I didn't come back to fight. I poked at my food, then finally broke the silence. Where's Lena? Dad set down his fork. Out, Mom sighed. She's been keeping to herself a lot lately. I wasn't surprised. She had spent years building a perfect image. Now that it had cracked, she was probably trying to figure out who she was without it. I knew that feeling all too well. She'll come around, Mom added. Just give her time. I nodded, but I wasn't sure Lena and I would ever go back to normal. Then again, maybe we weren't supposed to. Maybe normal had been the problem all along. It was late when Lena finally came home. I heard the front door open, soft footsteps in the hall. A few seconds later, she appeared in my doorway, leaning against the frame. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then, she sighed. You really came back. I shrugged. Guess so. She crossed her arms, shifting uncomfortably. I don't know what you expect from me. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Lena looked away. I mean, I don't know how to be your sister. That caught me off guard. You've been my sister our whole lives. She let out a dry laugh. No, I've been your rival. I spent so long trying to be better than you that I don't even know who I am without that. I leaned back against my bed. Yeah, I get that. Silence stretched between us. Then, softly, she said, "I'm sorry." I looked at her, searching for sarcasm, for manipulation, for something. But for once, there was nothing but honesty. And for the first time, I believed her. The next few weeks were strange. Lena and I weren't friends, exactly. But the tension between us was different. Less sharp, less exhausting. I caught her looking at me sometimes, like she was trying to figure out what being my sister actually meant. I was still figuring that out too. But for now, it was enough that we were trying. One evening, I was sitting outside when Jack showed up. "Wow," he said, flopping onto the bench next to me. "No dramatic twin war. No public humiliation." He smirked. "Kinda disappointing." I rolled my eyes. "Sorry to ruin your entertainment." He nudged me. "So, you good?" I thought about it. About everything that had happened. About who I was before and who I was now. Then I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." Jack grinned. "Well, damn. Look at you. Personal growth and everything." I laughed, shaking my head. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real victory. Story 2. Hello. I've been considering sharing this, but I feel compelled to do so. To be honest, I'm at a loss for how else to interpret what transpired. Sophie is my name. I've been living at home for a few years since I graduated from high school, and I'm 20 years old. However, I've been locked in this strange relationship with my family for a long time, and I'm simply over it. My 2 younger siblings are Emma, 14, and Jason, 17. Additionally, they have always been pampered as long back as I can recall. From housework to expectations for my future, my parents have always been quite rigorous with me. However, they've allowed Jason and Emma to get away with almost everything for whatever reason. Chores are never required of them. They never face any repercussions. In the meantime, I work a full-time job over here and come home every day to take care of all the housekeeping. Let me briefly outline the typical routine at home. To get to work, I get up early. Then, at night, I return fatigued. However, as soon as I enter the room, I am expected to begin preparing dinner, cleaning the kitchen, doing the laundry, and occasionally even cleaning up whatever mess my siblings may have left behind. In contrast, Jason and Emma spend their time playing on their phones or watching TV. Literally, they are never requested for assistance, and it is enough for me. Last Thursday, things really got out of hand. I had just finished a grueling 9-hour stint at work. My feet ached. I only wanted to lie down for 5 minutes because I hadn't had time to eat. But the distinct scent of leftover food hit me as soon as I entered. I looked around and noticed that Jason's soiled plate, covered in crumbs, was positioned directly in the center of the coffee table. Now, Jason has a habit of leaving his trash everywhere: plates, wrappers, whatever. I go crazy about it. But since I didn't want to create another argument, I've just become accustomed to it by now. However, I was unable to accomplish it this time. In an attempt to relax, I passed the plate, but then I heard my mother coming from the kitchen. "Sophie, could you please come in and tidy the table?" Once more, Jason dropped his plate. She yelled. I was already seething within my brain. Why is it me every time? Why do I have to do the cleanup after everyone else? However, I made an effort to remain composed and entered the kitchen. I spent the entire day at work, Mom. I'm worn out. For once, Jason is able to tidy up after himself. I didn't even bother to disguise how frustrated I was. It wasn't warmly received by her. You're the oldest, Sophie. You ought to lead by example. Simply tidy it up. You're behaving as, like, it's really important. I was shocked to hear that. I'm not a maid, Mom. Jason and Emma get away with it while I do all the housework. Why are they unable to assist for once? Mom looked at me like that one in which she becomes protective. You're going overboard. This is not something we have time for. Please just clean things up. My blood began to heat up. It's not just the platter here. You have been mistreating me for years. I'm working and cleaning all the time. Additionally, you never ask Emma or Jason for help. I'm finished. Mom, I'm tired of having to do everything by myself. Her expression stiffened. Simply put, you're being overly sensitive. Sophie, you are now 20 years old. You've grown up. You can assist without grumbling now that you're old enough. My heart was pounding. I am an adult. So why am I still confined to this place, taking care of everything while you pamper them? I pointed to Emma and Jason, who were both seated in the living room and completely unaware of what was going on. "You're behaving as like this is really important," Mom yelled once again. "Instead of whining, you should be thankful that you are living here for free. What's wrong with you?" For me, that was the tipping moment. All at once, I felt tired, frustrated, and aware that I was not making progress with them. "I'm finished," I stated before giving it my full attention. "I'm leaving." Mom's eyes widened as she froze. "What? You're not serious? Even so, where will you go? I'll work it out." Taking my car keys from the counter, I said, "I have months' worth of savings. This is no longer necessary for me." Even though my pulse was pounding, I felt liberated at that very moment. I couldn't go back, but my mom yelled after me, yelling something about how I didn't have to do this. I couldn't subject myself to this any longer. I refused to remain and continued to be treated as like I didn't exist. I was relieved when I got into my car after slamming the door behind me. I didn't care that I didn't yet know where I would stay. I simply knew I couldn't spend any more time in that house. I don't believe I've ever had such an odd fusion of exhilaration and terror in my life. It was a peaceful drive. To get my mind straight, I drove about aimlessly for a while. I knew I couldn't return home, but I wasn't sure where I would remain. I sat in my car for a time after parking at a nearby cafe. I came across a few rental room advertisements while browsing through my phone, and after a few phone calls, I finally located a location that seemed respectable. A little flat with just one bedroom in a peaceful area of the city. I could afford the rent for the time being, but it was more than I wanted to spend. It was worth it to be away from my family, to not have to deal with their continual criticism, or to clean up after them. The next day, I signed the lease, and before the end of the week, I had packed my belongings and left the house. I brought my job equipment, some simple furnishings, my clothes, and a few mementos. Knowing that I wouldn't be returning was an odd feeling. No more being told I was too sensitive or doing arbitrary duties. The most liberating days were the first few. It has been a while since I felt. I remained where I was, adjusting to the silence. There was no one to tell me what I should or shouldn't do, so I was free to come and go as I wanted. I did not have to cook if I did not want to, and I cooked when I felt like it. Even though it was a tiny space, it was mine, and that was plenty. Things began to calm down as the days passed. After I established a regular work schedule, went to the gym, and watched some Netflix in the evenings, I began to feel more like myself. Though, to be honest, I was beginning to see how poisonous my family dynamic had been. I still maintained contact with a few pals. I no longer had to bear the burden of all their troubles. It was amazing how free it seemed. However, the call began around a week after I moved out on my own. My mother left me a single voicemail at first. Her voice was worried, but not in the kind that comes from genuinely caring about my well-being. It was just normal. No, this was not the same sort of worry. "Sophie, you must return home for us. The house is in disarray. Nobody is performing any of the duties, and you left your belongings all over the place. Jason and Emma don't even know how to clean up after themselves, and your dad has been whining. Just return for a short while, please. Things are getting out of control. We truly need your assistance." As I listened to the message, a small amount of rage began to rise. Assist. Previously, they had not been interested in my assistance. They had never inquired about my needs or desires, but all of a sudden, they wanted me back while I wasn't doing the duties. I didn't return her call. Jason texted me the next day. It got right to the point. "Sophie, you must come home and assist." Mom adds, "The house is collapsing. Do you no longer give a damn about us?" I spent some time looking at the screen. I put down my phone and shook my head, trying to stop myself from responding with something sarcastic. They didn't even inquire about my well-being. All they desired was a maid. The texts continued over the following few days without my response. My folks, then Jason and even Emma, began contacting each other in some way. Voicemails, calls, and texts. Nevertheless, it was all the same. They urged me to return and finish the job. Their need for their mother was growing. "Just return and assist with cleaning the kitchen, Sophie. We're going wild for Mama Sophie because of it. It's been a while since we last saw you. You are missed. Additionally, when you get the opportunity, could you wash your laundry?" From Jason. "Sophie, really? What's wrong with you? You're just being selfish," Mom remarked. "Just lend us a hand for a while." I couldn't decide which irritated me more. The fact that they continued to behave as though they missed me, or that they were still blind to the reality that I was more than simply their maid. They only cared about how much work I was doing for them. Despite everything I had given and done for them, they showed no concern for me. What I desired didn't matter to them. Only the duties were involved. I lost my temper one evening when my folks left me another voicemail. My phone broke while I was at home, finally getting some sleep after a hard work day. I was unable to resist. I returned my mother's call. "Mom," I began in a forceful yet calm voice. "I'm not returning. Cleaning up after everyone is no longer my responsibility. I'm not your maid." The person on the other end of the queue paused. "What are you discussing?" Her tone was defensive as she spoke. "You're behaving absurdly. Your dad is going crazy, and the house is a complete mess. The only one who could take action is you." "No. The only one who ever takes action is myself. After years of doing everything, I'm done. You and Dad need to start teaching your children responsibility and real parenting if you want the house to be clean. I will no longer be tidying up after them." "All right," she yelled. "So you don't give a damn about the family?" I gave a quick breath. "No, Mother. I now take care of myself. And you can't use guilt tripping to get me to come back and do everything for you. I'm finished." She yelled at me to quit being selfish as the call came to an end. I experienced a feeling of closure even though it hurt. I would never return to that. The following week flew by, filled with work, exercise, and, for the first time in a long time, peaceful evenings spent by myself in my flat. I was able to breathe. I didn't have to return home to an incessant to-do list, guilt trips, and expectations. Naturally, though, my parents cautioned against letting me go so lightly. My dad, Sophie, had left me a message on my phone on a Thursday night. "This is becoming unmanageable. We have been responsible for cleaning the entire house ourselves. If you don't come home and assist us, we won't be able to continue managing." I rolled my eyes as I gazed at the writing. It was a more straightforward version of the same old speech. They were becoming frantic, and I could sense the tension rising. I nearly ignored it, but I couldn't help myself. "Something has to be said." So, trying to be as calm as possible, I answered, "Dad, I'm not going back. I will no longer be tidying up after all of you. I have no obligation to maintain order in the house." Hours passed with no response, and a part of me believed that perhaps they were beginning to understand at last. Perhaps they were starting to see that I would no longer be their doormat. However, my phone buzzed once again as I was about to unwind, this time indicating that Jason had called. Even though their messages were already annoying me, I picked it up, assuming I would simply quickly shut it off. "Hey," Jason said, with a tone of calmness that I didn't like. "Why do you take this so personally? It's more than simply the duties, you know. Mom and Dad are having a lot of trouble, and you're just tossing it all away when they need support." Before the debate had even started, I was already worn out and rubbed my temples. "I'm not discarding anything, Jason. I'm tired of being treated as though I'm the only person capable of doing anything. Both of us are old enough to begin taking care of our own affairs. You should have learnt it from your parents. However, you could assist," he continued, obviously growing irritated. "You may simply return for a short while, till the situation subsided. You're not really accomplishing anything significant over there anyhow." That final sentence struck a chord. I have a job, Jason. In fact, I'm making progress in my life. I'm not going to wait around for someone else to look after me. But you spend your entire day playing video games and scattering the dishes. You expect me to pick you up after that?" He chuckled, as if I had said something amusing. "Well, none of us have a job, do we? Just because you work a little, you act like you're a huge deal. Mom and Dad already have enough stress from your behavior." I was finished. "What do you know? I'm done discussing this. You can continue to play these games with your parents. However, I am no longer your scapegoat. I'm not returning." My heart pounding, I hung up before he could utter another word. However, my phone buzzed once again as soon as I put it down. It came from my mother this time. I nearly hesitated to open it, but my curiosity won out. "Sophie, we must speak. You must return home. The house is in total disarray as your father has a breakdown. It's not fair of you. Just return for a little while and assist us, please." I experienced a sudden outburst of rage, a collapse. To myself, I mumbled, "For years, they have been the ones who have been breaking me down." Despite the fact that I didn't answer her, I could feel their expectations and demands pressing down on me. I detested it. I made the decision to wander around the streets that evening in order to decompress. I reflected on the treatment I had received from my parents, who treated me like an underpaid maid, the way they allowed my brothers get away with murder while believing I should be thankful for the crumbs of affection. They gave my way. It was unfair. And now I was suffering because I had defended myself after returning to my flat. Something has changed, I thought. Cleaning the house was no longer the only concern. It has to do with my independence. My family has always expected me to submit to their wishes and put their convenience ahead of my own satisfaction. However, I had done enough. I was no longer going to feel bad because of them. The call resumed a few days later. There was more than one SMS or voicemail this time. It was unrelenting. 5 consecutive messages, each more desperate than the last, were left by my mom when she phoned. "We absolutely need you to return, Sophie. This is becoming unmanageable. It's too much for your dad to bear alone." Emma and Jason refused to take any action. "The only one who can assist is you." And then another one a few hours later. "Sophie, please, I beseech you, return. We'll put things right. Just return for a time. You don't have to accomplish everything. We are in dire straits. This can only be fixed by you." You could hear the anguish in her voice. However, I could also detect a hint of tampering. It has nothing to do with me. The goal was to organize the house. Regarding bringing me back to complete the tasks, they declined to complete themselves. I let the messages to accumulate. Each one served as a reminder of everything that I had done for them and all that I had given up for their comfort. They were now attempting to shame me into taking on the same role. I wasn't going back, though. Jason called again shortly after. "Really? Are you just going to disregard us in this manner? Because you're too obstinate to assist. You're allowing the home to collapse. It's pitiful." The call was sent to voicemail by me. I was finished. Despite my best efforts to ignore them, I could feel their presence hovering over me. I sensed them tugging at the corners of my determination. There was increasing pressure to go back and correct everything. However, I couldn't allow them to tear me down once more. I was free, and I had no intention of returning. Not until they realized the damage they had caused to me. After my mom's last urgent texts, a few days went by. I had no desire to return. I was aware of that. However, something continued to bother me. There was an unsettled aspect of me that desired resolution, that wished to put a definitive stop to it. So I made up my mind at last. I was returning. However, it wasn't about making things right for them this time. I wanted to be obvious that I was finished. I grabbed my keys, put on pants and an old hoodie, and drove back to my folks' house. My heart started pounding as soon as I got into the driveway. Everything seemed different today, even if the home was familiar. This was no longer home as it had once been. It was a battleground. I inhaled deeply before approaching the door. Without waiting for an answer, I pushed it open after knocking once. From the other side of the door, I could already hear my dad speaking to Jason and Emma in the kitchen. The fragrance was the first thing I noticed as I entered. Like a location you would only want to be in if you had no other option. The house had a stale stench. I entered the kitchen without making any effort to be polite. My parents' cheeks lighted up with surprise and relief as soon as I stepped in. "Sophie, you've returned." Mom came running over, looking almost radiant. I believed I had come to save them, Dad remarked, finally, and rose from the table. "We have been anticipating your arrival. This situation has truly gone out of hand." Jason and Emma were so engrossed in whatever was happening in their own little universes that they hardly looked up from their phones. For a moment, I watched their faces, thinking that I would just revert to the character I had been playing for years, the one who fixed everything and put everything right. Instead, I inhaled deeply and exhaled gradually. "I'm not here to save you, sorry." My voice was firm, but it was heavy with the burden I had been bearing for so long. You could see the bewilderment on their expressions. My mother stepped back, blinking as if she was having trouble understanding what I was saying. "What are you saying? Sweetheart, you've returned. You are sorely needed." "No, Mother. I'll clean up after you, please. You won't clean up your mess on your own, therefore you need me to do it for you." I'm finished after years of doing it. They went cold, and I noticed a difference in their eyes for the first time. My dad started to say something, but I stopped him. "I'm tired of holding things together while you all relax and let me handle it," I went on. "I don't want to be the one who has to constantly make repairs, so you can act as though nothing is wrong." I pivoted and surveyed the kitchen, The dirty dishes were heaped on the counter. The floor was covered with spills and crumbs. The wash basin was piled high with dirty pots and pans, and the rubbish was piled high. It was a complete disaster, a catastrophe. Take a look at this. I pointed to the kitchen as I said, "You've been requesting that I return to this. Do you want me to clean this up?" "Mom, take a step back. Sophie, we've been quite busy. We are aware that your dad has been ill. Give up apologizing. I'm not coming back to clean this. This is about all of you taking advantage of me for years, without ever considering that perhaps you ought to accept part of the blame. Emma and Jason are old enough to handle household tasks on their own. Whether they're still in school doesn't matter to me. The parents are you. Instead of letting me handle everything, you ought to be instructing them." I could see the fracture in my dad's normally guarded posture, but his face was flushed crimson with rage. He said, "We never asked you to do all this for us. You decided to provide a hand. You weren't forced to do it." I had a moment of irritation, but I controlled myself. "The point isn't that. I've done what you expected me to do, Dad." I turned to face my siblings, who remained engrossed on their phones. "You two also don't get a pass." With a stern voice, I added, "I will not return to serve as your maid. It's time for you to start contributing. This entire situation, in which I cook, clean, and take care of everything while you all relax, must cease." Jason gave an eye roll. "Whoa, dramatic. A lot. For once, could you please assist us? Dramatic. I'm finished." I interrupted him. I said, "For years, I've been doing this, yet nobody has ever appreciated it. Not once. I go back to my folks. I'm done, which is why I came here today. I'm not returning. Every time you make a mistake, I won't be the one to pick up the pieces. You have to work this out for yourself." They stared at me as they stood there in amazement. I could see the thoughts racing through my mother's mind as her lip trembled. However, it was too late. I wasn't going to change my mind about what I had decided. "I'm going." I turned to face the door and stated that, "I wish you luck." I heard my mother yelling my name as I left the home. "Don't go, Sophie, please. This is something we can resolve." However, I didn't look back. I didn't turn around as I continued to go, letting the door close behind me. I climbed into my vehicle and drove off. With a sense of relief I hadn't had in a long time, my chest felt heavy. I had regained control. There will be no more cleanup after them. No more feeling compelled to solve their issues. For me, it was time to live. I had a sense of closure as I drove off. I was certain that I had made the proper decision. Being cruel wasn't the point. The goal was to take charge of my life and stop allowing them to deplete me. How do you all feel? Do you think I should have done this sooner? Or did I make the proper decision to prioritize myself? Tell me what you think. Story 3. Is that Mercedes brand new? As my sister Laura got out of a shiny black SUV that most likely cost more than my yearly wage, I stood in my driveway and stared at her. She informed me only last week that she was still in too much financial trouble to begin paying back the money she had borrowed. Laura touched the spotless hood of the automobile. I only received it yesterday. Very still. Some of its qualities are unbelievable. I'm Rachel Sullivan, and at the age of 32, I was watching my sister show off a fancy automobile as the $45. I had loaned her a year earlier lay unpaid. The money came from my house, my down payment fund, and money I had accumulated over years of careful budgeting and eventually employment at my graphic design business. I assumed you were having financial difficulties. I spoke, attempting to maintain a steady tone. Remember, that's why you had to borrow money, to stay out of bankruptcy. Laura dismissively waved her hand. I still am. This isn't the same. It's only a lease. I also needed something dependable for my job. I recalled the day she'd arrived at my door crying, mascara streaming down her cheeks, and crying about her growing credit card debt, her potential home loss, and her need for assistance. Only this once. Because it's what sisters do. I wrote the check that same day, spending the majority of my money. They support one another. I reminded out that your old automobile was just 3 years old, and you said that after 6 months you would begin paying me back. Rachel, don't be so stiff. You're doing all right. You've always handled money well. You don't actually need it at the moment anyhow. She took out her phone and looked at each screen to see her reflection. Oh, did I mention that this summer I'm going to Europe? But you ought to come. For you, it can be a little pricey. The nonchalant manner she rejected my loan and the implication that I didn't deserve repayment since I was excellent with money left me stunned. The foolishness of asking me to go on a lavish vacation when you owe me thousands of dollars. All of it came at me at once. I responded, I really do need the money. I had intended to use it as a down payment for a home. Perhaps this indicates that you should continue renting. Being a property owner comes with a lot of responsibilities. She looked at her timepiece. I can't stay, anyway. I have an appointment at the spa. We ought to have lunch shortly. When I observed her leaving in her brand new Mercedes, something broke inside of me. A year of justifications, diversions, and unfulfilled commitments culminated in a flash of insight. It wasn't simply money that my sister struggled with. I was being taken advantage of by her. I would also let her do it. It was a familiar trend. Laura had always been the affable one growing up, able to talk her way into or out of any situation. When she left college after 3 costly semesters, my parents paid off her first credit card, which she had maxed up at the age of 19. It was dubbed Finding Her Path. Every financial catastrophe was greeted with understanding, assistance, and typically a check. I had chosen a different path throughout my time in college, carefully accumulating money while establishing my graphic design job through internships. My parents referred to me as the responsible one, but the way they said it made it sound uninteresting, as if Laura's never-ending line of thrilling errors somehow outshone my financial acumen. I looked at the dramatic decline in my funds from a year ago when I opened up my bank statements that evening. With my nearly $60,000 in savings, I could have made a respectable down payment in our neighborhood. Laura had now forced me to rent a little flat as I watched my sister drive about in a fancy automobile. My mom texted me and my phone chimed. Laura recently took us to see her new vehicle. Isn't it beautiful? She claimed to have gotten a fantastic bargain. She had, of course, despite continually getting fantastic prices. Laura, nevertheless, ended up broke. I considered telling my mother about the overdue debt, but I was aware of the outcome of such discussion. She is going through a difficult period, as my mother would say. You are aware of the difficulties she has had after the divorce. Even though Laura's divorce occurred 3 years earlier, she was still able to avoid responsibilities. She didn't care that her ex-husband had left her a sizable settlement in a paid-off house. She had somehow managed to burn through it all while continuing to live a lavish lifestyle. Laura's frantic email from a year ago was there when I opened my inbox. I swear that I will reimburse you within a maximum of 6 months. Rachel, you are my only hope. I may lose everything. I realize this is a lot to ask, but you've always handled money so well. Help me, please. I will always remember this. Months of follow-up emails followed, each with a new justification for why she was unable to begin paying me back, such as a leaky roof, property taxes, or auto repairs. Nevertheless, she managed to afford frequent trips to the salon, weekend getaways, and now a brand new Mercedes. I got a fresh email on my PC from Laura showing the family pictures of her automobile. She wrote about fresh starts. Investing in oneself is sometimes necessary. Make an investment in yourself. Using my funds that were meant to be invested in my future and my aspirations to become a homeowner. Anger trembling in my hands, I shut off my laptop. The money was no longer the only consideration. It was about being taken for granted, about family, and about respect. The following day, I began to collect proof. Each and every bank transfer, text message, and email. I recorded everything. Using my background in graphic design, I was able to compile a thorough timeline of Laura's assurances and justifications. The pattern was nearly comical. Months of avoidance interspersed with casual references to her most recent indulgences were followed by urgent requests for assistance. In my kitchen, I even located the serviette on which she had scrawled her payback schedule that day. She had written 6 months at most, with monthly payment amounts she had never paid. I had held on to it in case it came up later. It now languished in my expanding collection of unfulfilled commitments. Laura sent me another text, and my phone buzzed. Next month, he explains, some friends are organizing a spa weekend. You ought to attend. We might arrange a payment schedule for your portion. I gaped in shock at the message. She had $45,000 off my funds and was encouraging me to spend it on a spa weekend. My blood boiled at the arrogance of it. My cousin Jenny phoned that night. Laura's new automobile caught my eye on Instagram. With caution, she said, "That sister who borrowed the down payment for your house, isn't she?" "The same thing," I answered. "Rachel?" Jenny's tone became solemn. "You must take action. This is unacceptable. My spouse practices law." "You ought to have received anything in writing," he says again. Of course, she was correct. Rather than defending myself, I had trusted my family. However, there was still time to correct that error. Jenny said, "You know what's going to happen. The entire family will accuse you of being unforgiving. They would advise you to show empathy since she is going through a difficult period. Since high school, she has been going through a difficult period. Meanwhile, my money are lying in her driveway. Therefore, I'm the one living in a one-bedroom flat," I remarked. I hung up and went to my laptop to look up small claims court processes. The majority of what Laura owed me would be covered by our state's maximum claim limit. I also discovered formal demand letter templates, the initial stage of the legal process. As I entered Laura's name into the template, my hands began to shake. Everything would be different because of this. No more pretending that everything was all right at family gatherings. No more pretending to be understanding while Laura wastes my money. Being the family ATM is over. However, I felt more determined as I surveyed my tiny flat and the life I had put on hold in order to support her. Laura had made her decision when she purchased that Mercedes. It was my turn to select mine now. I kept the receipt as additional proof when I sent the demand letter via certified mail. Laura waved the letter as she unexpectedly burst into my flat 3 days later. "With this legal shit, are you serious?" she yelled. "Your sister is me. Your own sister cannot be sued." I spoke steadily. "You've been dealing with this like sisters for a year. We're dealing with it like grown-ups who have reached a financial agreement. It's unbelievable that you're treating money so coldly. It's only financial. Family comes first." The waterworks that had worked so beautifully the prior time were already in motion when she fell onto my couch. "Family is vital. Yes. It was crucial that I offered you my down payment on my house when you needed assistance. So I agreed. It's crucial that I trusted you to fulfill your commitment. How are things going with that?" "I have been struggling, you know. For a new Mercedes, I cut in. It wasn't too difficult." "Are you planning a trip to Europe, or are you wearing those expensive boots?" Laura's tears quickly dried up and were replaced by rage. "You're only envious because I know how to have fun while you're frugal and fixated on spreadsheets. No, I'm upset with you because you exploited me. Because you squandered my money on upscale automobiles and spa vacations even though you said you would pay me back. All right." She picked up her high-end handbag and got to her feet. "Bring me to court. See how that makes Mom and Dad feel. They believe you would be very materialistic already. Constantly discussing investments and saving. Do you mean being accountable?" "Yes. How awful of me." My phone exploded with our parents' texts as she bounded out. Of course, Laura had contacted them right away. "Why do you threaten your sister, Mom? She is a member of the family." "Dad, let's discuss this. Lawyers are not necessary." I inhaled deeply before typing a group message. Laura agreed to pay back the $45,000 she borrowed a year ago in 6 months. Instead of repaying me, she purchased a new Mercedes yesterday. I'm tired of being exploited. Reactions were prompt. She had to use the automobile for work, Mom. "Dad, we might be able to arrange a payment schedule." "It's unbelievable that you're informing everyone about this, Laura. Private family affairs ought to remain private." That last one made me laugh aloud. Private family affairs. Similar to the Mercedes she had shown on social media. Similar to the trip to Europe she had been boasting about. "The money is still due, whether it is private or public," I answered. "You have 30 days to reply to the letter of demand. I'm going to file in small claims court after that." The following family meal turned into a battleground. In order to resolve the matter as a family, my mother had asked that we all come over. However, it was obvious what side she supported. Even Laura's favorite dish had been prepared by her. As if I could magically forget about $45,000 be eating spaghetti. Why you're acting so aggressively over this is beyond me. As she passed the garlic bread, my mother said, "Laura is enduring." I cut you off saying, "I'm leaving if you say a rough time again." For 15 years, she has been going through a difficult period. "She's driving a car that costs more than what she owes me in the meanwhile." Laura objected, "That's not the same. I'm investing in my career with the automobile. I have to portray success. What do you know? Projects? Achievement." I took out my document folder, settling your bills. being reliable? Not taking the down payment on your sister's home? Is it theft? Laura took a sharp breath. I took it from someone. You concurred. You made certain commitments when you borrowed it, and you broke them. We call that fraud. After eating his pasta in silence, my dad eventually said something. We might be able to assist. I could do something, and so could your mother. No, I put my fork down. The family isn't here to save Laura from yet another crisis. For the first time in her life, Laura must deal with the repercussions of her actions. We are family, though, Mom insisted. Family members support one another. Really? This family was where? Supports one another. Philosophy. After college, when I needed a flatmate. That large, unoccupied mansion belonged to Laura. However, you stated that I needed to become independent. Laura rolled her eyes. That was not the same. Yes, it was different since I needed support rather than you. When it's me, everything is different. You've always been really adept at managing things independently. Mom got things started. Mom, it isn't a punishment. I shouldn't be treated any less respectfully because I'm responsible. With all due respect, of my sister being true to her word. The ensuing hush was deafening. My mother appeared on the verge of tears. My father looked at Laura and his plate. Laura simply had a furious expression, as if I had been the one to deceive her. Next week, I'll be filing in small claims court, I said, getting to my feet. You have two options. Either start treating this seriously, or tell a judge why you chose to purchase a fancy automobile rather than pay back your loan. I'll warn you, Laura. It's going to alter everything. I actually gave my sister my whole attention. The well-maintained nails, the high-end clothing, and the arrogant demeanor that our family had meticulously fostered for years. I answered that everything had already changed. The day you decided your Mercedes was more important than your word was a turning point. Laura delivered on her promise to turn the extended family against me. My aunt called and told me that I was being irrational. Messages regarding family loyalty were conveyed by cousins. My grandma even voiced her disappointment with my decisions. All of their messages were stored in my legal file. Each one demonstrated how Laura had used the family as a weapon against me, making my demand for payment a betrayal. The only person who supported me was cousin Jenny, who, a week before to the court date, texted me every day with updates from her lawyer husband on what to anticipate in court. My parents tried one final time to help. Laura was there as well, and I accepted their invitation. We were about to receive chastisement while seated at the kitchen table like children. We've got a suggestion. According to my dad, taking out his checkbook will cover half of Laura's debt to you. We can move on from this whole unpleasant situation if you decide to abandon the legal lawsuit. I said, that's extremely kind of you. But no, you're not supposed to clean up Laura's trash once more. It's about Laura having to deal with the fallout. I could lose my vehicle. Laura exploded. If I have to pay you back everything at once, they could take it back. I'm not sure. You ought to have considered it before using my money to purchase it. It was no longer your money. I took it from someone. Laura, that's not how loans operate. It's not up to you to decide. You're keeping it. My mother broke down in tears. Rachel, please. Our family is being torn apart by this. No, Mother. This family was ripped apart by Laura's activities. I'm just not going to act like that never happened. She is your sister, though. My father made another attempt. Indeed. Yes, she is. She should have respected me enough as my sister to honor her promise to refrain from purchasing expensive automobiles while she was in debt to me. Must refrain from treating me like a bank that is exempt from repayment. Laura abruptly got to her feet. All right. For financial gain, do you wish to ruin this family? Proceed. However, don't count on me ever forgiving you. Remembering all the times I'd witnessed the same performance, the dramatic exit, the tears, the guilt trips, I watched her storm off. The family would hurry to calm Laura and make things right, for Laura to justify herself. Not now. In court, I'll see you. I called out to her. I then looked at my parents. I'll identify you as co-defendants for trying to obstruct justice if you seek to settle her debt on her behalf. My father's face became white. It was the first time my mother's weeping stopped suddenly. They viewed me as someone who could hold her ground, rather than as a dependable daughter they could take for granted. I came early on the morning of the hearing, wearing my best business attire and bringing my well-arranged evidence file. While her husband assisted me in preparing my presentation to the court, Jenny accompanied me for encouragement. Naturally, Laura arrived late. wearing high-end clothing and a brand new purse that most likely cost more than my rent each month. She walked right in. Our parents were uneasy as they sat behind her in the small claims courthouse. The judge, a straightforward lady in her 60s, paid close attention to what I had to say. Photos show Laura's latest purchases, including the Mercedes, the timeline of justifications, Laura's written commitments, and the initial bank transfer. Laura tried her normal strategies when it was her turn to talk. She sobbed. She discussed devotion to one's family. She brought up her 3-year-old divorce. She described how the vehicle was essential to her work in real estate. It did not move the judge. She said to Laura, "Miss Sullivan, are you telling me that you owe your sister $45,000 sand, bought a fancy car?" "It's only a lease," Laura objected. "I also needed it for my job. I didn't ask that question." "Instead of paying back your sister, did you purchase a new car?" "Yes, but additionally, last month you shared these vacation pictures on social media. Was this travel also required for work?" Laura made an uncomfortable change. "No, but this court has a very low opinion of those who show such flagrant disrespect for their financial commitments, Miss Sullivan. Your sister gave strong proof of the loan and your capacity to pay it back. Had you made the decision?" I saw Laura's expression as she understood that her typical tricks were failing. The magistrate wasn't a relative. She was unmoved by sobs, guilt trips, or tales of hardship, and the judge went on. "Your posts on social media point to a pattern of wasteful spending while purposefully avoiding debt. This court rules in the plaintiff's favor. Within 90 days, you must return the entire $45,000. 90 days? Laura took a sharp breath. That isn't feasible. That's not the type of money I have. You might want to think about selling your new vehicle. Dryly, the judge made a suggestion. Next case. Then Laura came at me in the hallway. Are you happy now? Everything is damaged by you. It was damaged by you, calmly, I answered. When you decided that your opulent lifestyle was more significant than your moral character, you damaged it. My parents lingered close by, somewhat bewildered. Laura has never previously faced actual repercussions. They had never witnessed me confront her in this manner. We could assist with the money. My father began to make an offer. You dare not. I interrupted him. She made decisions that led her into this predicament. She can go in the same manner as Jenny and I left the courthouse. For the first time in months, I felt lighter. The money was important. Yes, but that wasn't the main focus of this. It was about defending my rights, refusing to be used, and ultimately ending the family's history of supporting Laura's actions. Like a tidal wave, the court case's aftermath swept over our family. In order to settle her debt with me, Laura had to give up her Mercedes. When people began to wonder what really happened, she noticeably disabled comments on her dramatic social media postings about betrayal and the cost of trusting family. My parents found it difficult to adapt to the new dynamic of our family. As if nothing had happened, my mother continued to try to mediate the situation by asking us both to supper. After I said no, she started contacting me every day to let me know how tough things were for Laura. Her journey to Europe had to be canceled. One evening, my mother mentioned that she was searching for a smaller flat. Isn't that sufficient punishment? Mom, that's not punishment. Living within her means is what it is, just as everyone else must. However, having to drive her old automobile again at work makes her feel really ashamed. Do you mean her Audi, which was in wonderful condition at the age of 3 prior to the horror? Laura sold her new car and a few designer things to pay back around half of her debt to me after the first month. Instead of repaying borrowed funds, she pretended to be giving a kidney and made sure everyone was aware of every payment. The family reunion followed. I made the decision to go this year as our aunt hosts it every year. Laura's drama wasn't going to stop me from participating in family customs. The rumors began as soon as I got there. Some family members stayed away from me entirely. Others gathered around me to express their thoughts on how I ought to have handled the situation in a more private setting. However, my younger cousin had an unforeseen circumstance and began approaching me for financial guidance. In a low voice, my Aunt Susan said that my stance had given her the confidence to stop sending her son money since he was addicted to gambling. After learning about Laura's situation, even my Uncle George, who had previously chastised me for appearing in court, acknowledged that his own daughter had begun making loan payments. He patted my shoulder and remarked, "Tough love is sometimes needed in family." I didn't learn the lesson myself for too long. My dad was the true surprise. During the reunion, he drew me away with an uneasy yet resolute expression. He said, "I've been thinking. Me and your mom, over the years we did Laura no favors, perhaps even you. We had high expectations for you, Dad, and low expectations for her. No, let me finish observing your tenacity. It made me see how much we've supported her behavior and how unjust we've been to you. Even when everyone was against you." He produced an envelope. "It's not to settle her debt. This isn't the same. Me and your mom, when Laura purchased her home, we assisted her with a down payment. We ought to have treated you the same way. It's a beginning, but it's not the entire sum." I examined the check. The price was $25,000. Not only cash, but recognition, respect, and acknowledgement. I blinked back tears as I responded, "Thanks, Dad. This has great significance." Laura made the last payment 6 months after the court case. She wrote a cryptic social media remark about ending challenging chapters and moving on, but she didn't say anything when she deposited the money. According to our common acquaintances, she was genuinely following a budget for the first time in her life and had begun visiting a financial counselor. My mother was still having trouble adjusting to the new dynamic in our household. Unable to comprehend that sometimes relationships must remain broken in order to heal effectively, she persisted in attempting to arrange possibilities for reconciliation. Her attempts to coerce me into making amends were thwarted by my dad, who had turned into an unexpected ally. I immediately put the money into my house fund, and with my dad's extra assistance, I was able to save enough for a down payment. I reflected on how different things were from a year ago, on the day I closed on my new house. I had lost my sister's comfortable connection, certain family members' unquestioning support, and the dependable peacekeeping position I had played for so long. But I had gained something more valuable: self-respect. The assurance that I could defend myself, even in the face of difficulty and pain. Even though everyone thought I would give in, Jenny helped me move into my new house as usual. She also gave me a framed quotation that she had created using her own graphic design abilities as we were unpacking boxes. It said that your self-respect might occasionally be the greatest cost of serenity. In my home office, I hung it, a reminder of boundaries earned and lessons learned. I saw my changed family dynamics unfold in real time during my housewarming party. Laura didn't show up, but she sent a store-bought card signed by her and accompanied with a simple congrats. Just acknowledgement from a safe distance, without any dramatic remarks or phony feelings. My folks arrived early to assist with setup. Although she didn't press the matter, my mother nevertheless had a dejected expression when she brought up Laura's absence. My father pulled me aside so he could show me a spreadsheet he had created to keep tabs on his personal spending. At last, he had taken charge of the family's money rather than allowing them to go out of hand. According to her, Cousin Jenny brought a bottle of champagne and her well-known lasagna to the new beginnings, and to not back down. After first criticizing me, several family members now inquired about my home buying experience. Some even acknowledged that they wished they had been more stringent when it came to lending to their own relatives. The house was mine, even if it wasn't as fancy as the one I might have purchased a year prior, when Laura's loan depleted my resources, obtained with diligence and shielded by newly discovered strength. Every space stood for both my monetary investment and my personal commitment in myself. I discovered a peaceful spot to sit on my new back porch later that night and listen to the joyful conversation that had taken place inside a year prior. I had been the dependable family peacekeeper who would do whatever it took to ensure everyone was content. I was different now, something more robust, distinct, and well-defined. In order to fully reset, familial ties may need to be broken. Holding someone accountable might occasionally be the most loving thing you can do. And sometimes you discover what you truly deserve when you lose what you believed you needed.